Okay, we are live and focused on Fort Worth. It's time to get connected with Camille. We have attorney Sara Vargas on tonight with our 7 Ds of real estate. The D that she will be, here for is divorce. Not a fun topic, but it is something that some of us experience in this life. So my goal is to get you connected with a top family law attorney right here in Fort Worth. So thank you, Sara, for being on our show tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So before I dive in, how I like to start all of my episodes is we start with a place of food. We want to know, if you're not in the courthouse, where are you grabbing a bite to eat in Fort Worth?
For lunch, definitely the tavern, and I'm probably always getting the Sonoma steak salad.
Okay.
I've never had anything there that I don't like, and I did think about this the other day. One of our favorite dinner places is Toro Toro downtown.
I have been wanting to go there.
Ceviche.
Okay, so I saw that Toro Toro has live music on Wednesday. Okay, we're gonna have.
Let me know. We can go together. I'm down.
Okay. Yes. Okay, I've been wanting to try there, and I heard their happy hour is like amazing. Okay, I'm so excited. Toro Toro is on the 2026 list. Y'all hear that, Galentine's girls? You're gonna be added to the club. Okay, so look, food brings us together, but your career path brought you here tonight. And so before we get started, I understand you have some legal disclaimers you would like to get out.
Yeah, I'm here providing knowledge and having a conversation. None of this is legal advice to anybody. I do not represent anybody just by means of watching this. If you are my client and you're watching this, I still represent you. But if you're just watching this and think that I'm your attorney, we need to have a discussion first.
Okay, awesome. So look, I know you're an attorney. Everyone here knows that as well, but I would like to know the why. What made you get into law, and specifically family law?
Yeah, so that's a long story, but in undergrad, I wanted to be a prosecutor, and I thought I was going to go out there and change the world. And then anybody who knows me probably knows I'm not best at being just like a yes man. So I realized that wasn't going to be a good career path for me. Not to say that all prosecutors are, but I just didn't think it would work for me. So I switched to the defense side. I worked at a criminal defense firm in law school. And there was a family law case that came up, and I just happened to be taking family law, and I was like, I could write a brief on that. And that is really how I started doing family law. But it connects with my passion of helping people, and it helps me connect with my clients as well, because I personally have gone through my own journey of finding my dad and my siblings. And so I can understand where people are coming from when they come to me with these concerns about being absent from their children's lives, or what do I do with this amount of property that we have, and things like that.
Love that. Okay, so I prefaced this by calling you a divorce attorney, but technically you're family law. Can you expand upon what all you encompass?
Yeah, family law is broad. So, I mean, most people always think of divorce or child custody suits, but it can also involve modifications, adoptions, terminations, prenuptial agreements, post-nuptial agreements, cohabitation agreements. I don't personally do CPS, but family law does encompass CPS as well. So it's pretty broad.
Okay. We got a let's go from Dunn Anderson. All right, so let's dive in deeper into my D's of real estate. Obviously, we're here to talk about the life transition of divorce, and I would like to level set the age audience here. This is for 18 and up, and I will label that properly in YouTube. So let's get into it, okay? People, I Googled it. We did a poll, and the top 3 were, what are the reasons why people are getting divorced? But I want to know specifically from you, what are some of the reasons people are coming to you to uncouple?
So I think I've been getting a knack of getting like the not normal cases. So I don't know that I'm a good case study, I guess, of the top 3 reasons why most people are getting divorced.
Which are?
I think the top 3 reasons why people are getting divorced are financial reasons, that somebody cheated, whether with the person or just like online or emotionally. And then I think there's a lot of people that just got married young and they're separating now because they want to go do whatever it is they came to realize that they want to do.
Okay.
And the other person doesn't really want to come along.
And now you said me specifically, I've been getting the outliers. I would love to hear, what does that mean?
Um, it has become more frequent that we see people that are getting into like thruples or swingers and things like that, and no shame to that community whatsoever. But a lot of the people that I see that are getting divorced after that, usually it's not mutually agreed upon that we're starting this thruple. Somebody is like introduced as a friend.
Okay, how do you spell this?
Thruple. I don't even think it's an actual term, but I think it's THROUPLE.
Thruple.
Yeah, like three couple. Thruple.
Okay. Thruples is what's common here in Fort Worth that you're having to untangle. So instead of splitting something 50-50, is it having to be split into three?
No, absolutely not. No, we don't
Okay.
have polyamorous relationships in the United States. No.
Okay.
Well, at least not in Texas. Let me not say that.
I was just curious. I didn't know, I've never even heard of thruple. So now I'm going to have to go down a rabbit hole one day and look into that.
Or don't.
Or don't. Well, it's just, no, I think as a real estate agent, I might come across these things as well. So thank you for shedding light onto that. You mentioned you're part of the military community, so marrying young.
Yeah, my partner's he's in the Air Force.
Okay.
But I would say that a lot of people that are divorcing because they married young, it's becoming more common that we're having gray divorces. So people that are 50 and up. And I don't know that most of these people are just, falling out of love or whatever it may be. A lot of the times they can be amicable. But there's just a lot more property at that point to divide and things you need to be taking into consideration as you're reaching the end of your working career.
Okay. Interesting. So, yeah, I fall into that category of young military marriage, divorce, 7-year. What do they call it? The 7-year itch, where it just doesn't last after 7? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, most of my 20s was spent married, and then it was the life events that it's like, okay, I'm starting to feel like I'm not living up my life potential, differing views. And then as a
differing goals.
Correct. And as I have reflected, both of us were like, man, had we actually gotten married in our 30s, we would have been solid. But the discovering yourself in the 20s is a real thing. So like the one piece of advice I would give to my child is enjoy your 20s. Like,
for sure.
Yeah, don't commit to a lifelong commitment and the responsibility that it takes.
As an aside, I've considered like being that mom, and take this how you want, but I've considered being that mom of like, I will not give you money
Correct.
unless you go travel the world for 4 years and I don't know, don't go to law school or something.
Yeah. So no, it's funny that you bring that up because I actually involved my son in the trust planning, and he set the ages of whenever he's going to be part of it. So he selected 30 and then 35 for full, and he actually has to get a prenup whenever he marries. That's part of it. So like, hey, future daughter-in-law, don't be mad at my son. I'm the one who invoked those kinds of things. Okay. I'm working very hard to build a legacy.
I know we're gonna, and I knew this was gonna happen. We were gonna get off script, but like, can we just back up on the prenup? Because I feel like it gets such a bad rap, and it's like this viewpoint of, oh, you're just planning for divorce. Well, not necessarily, but also like it is being realistic. And what a better time to make decisions about how you want to divide your property than when you actually like somebody. Like, hey, I do want to consider you, so let me make this decision about how we're going to divide our property. Additionally, what a better way to like keep the government out of your business than doing a prenup and deciding how you guys want to divide your property instead of having a judge tell you how to divide your property. So
yeah,
that's just my 2 cents.
No, I love that. And so since you talked about prenups, How about you talk about a post-nup since we're off script, whatever.
Yeah. So post-ups happen after you're married. So it's an agreement between the spouses of whether you're going to convert community property into separate property, or you're potentially converting separate property into community property, which go talk to an attorney before you do that. But it's an agreement essentially that is similar to a prenuptial agreement that happens after you're married, and it directs how you're going to divide certain property, or you can address cash payments in the event that a certain event occurs. Like if somebody cheats again, then you're going to get paid X amount of dollars, things like that.
Is it wise as a business owner to have a postnuptial?
There's a lot of things that can be wise as a business owner, and a lot of reasons why you should get a postnuptial agreement, even if you're not a business owner. But if you are a business owner, it is something to consider, especially if this is something that you've kind of started on your own, of whether or not this other person has interest in that business that you've started, and whether you want them to keep that interest moving forward. So that is something to consider.
Okay. So how do you guide somebody? How do we start untangling this intertwinedness without it getting messy? What's your approach?
I think my approach to all of my cases is that I like to give the people involved, the family involved, the opportunity to make the decision or have an input on the outcome before we just start running to the courthouse. What I tell all of my clients is, at the end of the day, it's not my money, it's not my property, it's not my kids. So if you want to go and file for divorce and do those things, I think you should have a say in that and in the outcome. Now, that may be us giving up some things that you wouldn't have otherwise wanted, but having kind of that output or that income input in the outcome is really valuable. So that's kind of how I start all of my cases. But then when we're getting down to the nitty gritty of property, we're looking at, let's map out a chart. Let's see how much the value is of this. What's the tax consequence going to be if you keep this? What's like your long-term goal versus your short-term goal? Do you need more cash, or would you rather have more assets? Those types of things.
Okay. And then how do you handle one of the objections of, I have all this going for me. It's cheaper to keep her, cheaper to keep him. I'm just going to bear and grin.
Typically, I think that if that is the mindset that you're taking, then you need to reevaluate the position that you're in that marriage. Whether that is, do we do a postnuptial agreement then, so we're not having to divide X amount of property later? But also, a lot of people do look at the expense of a divorce and hiring an attorney and think, oh, it is cheaper to keep her. Why would I go spend $5,000-$10,000 or more on an attorney when I can just do it myself? And I've seen so many people now use the forms that are available online,
right?
And that can be a tool. If you have no property and you have no kids and you have nothing to lose, then sure, yeah, go do that. Which even then, probably not the best idea you could have. I think, though, that when you're dealing with, dividing your property and protecting your assets, it is worth paying the $5,000 now, so you're not having to pay it later and then triple fold, tenfold, whatever it is, because you didn't do it correctly in the decree.
Yeah. So since we're kind of talking about cost, what are we seeing? Like minimum, what's the least amount, and what's the most amount you've experienced?
That's an it depends question. I mean, it depends on a lot of factors of like whether or not it's very contentious. Are we running in and out of the courthouse every other week? Are we going to a final trial to just the judge? Are we going to a jury trial on your case? A lot of factors go into it. I mean, you can do a divorce probably for $2,500 depending on who you hire. But I mean, I've seen cases get 50,000 plus just because people are very litigious. So
just like not getting along, not being agreeable. So billable hours go up, cost goes up. Okay.
Yeah, and it also kind of depends on the complexity of the issues involved. Like, do we need to hire experts? Do we need to get, that financial advisor on your case? Do we need to hire a real estate agent to do valuations and
Mhm.
figure out whether or not this property is actually going to sell if we list it to sell?
Yeah.
Um, all of those types of issues kind of go into cost. So it's not easy to kind of predict, oh, your case is going to be X dollars. I can
Okay.
say, hey, if this happens, then it's probably going to increase expenses. But
Okay. So how do you guide someone who kind of has a hesitation, reservation on the cost? Do you do any kind of, I don't want to say like justifying your, pitching your value. That's a better proposition. Pitching your value and showing, hey,
I don't know that I have ever done that. I usually try to just let my work speak for itself. Like, if you don't think that my work is being valuable to you, then that's your choice. And you can either go hire somebody else or you can try to do this yourself. But I know what I know, and I know how I practice and how I approach my cases, and I zealously advocate for my clients. So
jealously.
that's kind of what you're getting. But I think you also need to evaluate when you do have property, like, what could I be losing? If you have
Yes.
a $500,000 house, do you want to lose that? Do you even know the difference between separate and community property? And are you about to give up your separate property, a $500,000 house, because you don't know the difference? Like, I think that's worth paying me $5,000.
Hey, you're not wrong. So, look, since we're on that topic, in Texas, we are a community property state, but that doesn't always mean 50-50. So, what are factors that may cause a judge to award a larger portion of the share of equity in a home?
Yeah, so it is widespread amongst people that think that when you go into divorce, it's automatic 50-50. The Texas Family Code does not have 50-50 in it. What
Okay,
it says is that the division that a court orders is to be just and right to both parties.
Justin, right.
So when we're talking about doing a disproportionate division and whether or not somebody gets more than the other person, what a court will look at is like earning potential of the parties, age of the parties. Are these people getting in that gray divorce area and one person has a $2 million 401k and the other person has, $5,000 in savings because they raised their kids the entire time? We're looking at whether or not somebody has sufficient separate property outside of the community estate. We can look at fault in the breakup. Did somebody cheat? We can look at the benefits that a spouse would have received if the marriage continued, tax consequences. I mean, there's a laundry list of items that you can look at to kind of argue that disproportionate division.
Okay, so I'm glad that you brought that up. So it sounds like I'm kind of connecting the dots of the cheaper to keep her mindset, and you're talking about long-term financial planning and kind of forecasting.
Yeah.
So it's sounding like when they have a consultation with you that you're going to talk about some of these things to, I don't want to say like stop the bleeding, like a diagnosis.
Well, I call them case action plans. Like, we need to sit down, and when you consult with me, we're going to draft our case action plan of, we're going to file this, then our move is going to be this. If they respond in this way, then we're going to go here. If they respond in that way, then they go here. Now, generally, most cases kind of have the same pattern, but sometimes you need to be able to pivot and move. So we'll have multiple case action plan meetings throughout your entire case, but that's what that is for, is to make sure that we are being strategic and planning both short term and long term.
So almost like asset inventory and then having to divide. And I think for my time at the U.S. Attorney's Office, they call it discovery. Like, when do you unveil all of these for, I'm not just going to like say business owners, but for certain individuals who may have businesses, LLCs that the spouse isn't on, bank accounts that the spouse isn't on. Like, how does that get accounted for?
Yeah, I mean, you do discovery and you find things. You look at the documents and you can find things, but also you're supposed to do what's called an inventory and appraisement, where you kind of list out all of your property, the things that you have. I do that in my cases, whether it's agreeable or not, because I just think it helps me kind of visualize what the property is. And then I can sit down with my client and be like, okay, if we divided this way, you may be losing more money versus keeping a appreciable asset.
So, with that being said, now that you've done this inventory of discovery, do you typically get more than 50%? for your clients? Do you help achieve that?
I don't know that is what I would base my success on.
Okay. Okay.
Have we gotten more than 50%? Yes. Like that's kind of given. But I don't know that it's solely dependent on discovery or solely dependent on an inventory and appraisement. It depends on like a lot of other things going on in the case. Like, do you
It
just have the
depends. The
facts
lawyer answer.
facts just in your favor, and that was going to be the outcome, kind of no matter what. So
Okay. Okay. And so, some people have this reservation going in that I'm going to have to pay alimony. I don't want to do this. I'm just going to stay married until these kids are grown. Can you explain how alimony works in Texas? Are we even an alimony state? What are the
Texas is a
laws?
spousal support state, and it depends on a lot of different factors. But typically, what you're looking at is whether a spouse has the ability to meet their reasonable living expenses, and there has to be some other threshold requirements for that. So,
Age? I mean, time of marriage?
time of marriage, whether or not like the spouse is disabled, whether the child's disabled. Um, there's various different things that go into that, but then also at the end of it, we're kind of looking at, if we do this property division in a certain way, will they have enough to meet their reasonable needs to where we're not doing spousal support moving forward. So people may be scared about paying spousal support, but that's something that, could be an argument to be made. But also I would be more so looking at how we're dividing my property. Am I giving up more of my retirement or my ownership in a home that I know will grow over time?
Okay, so perfect.
Cash.
Right. So since we're on that topic, can we talk about the OLT of partition? And can you explain what that means to people who didn't go to law school? OLT of partition?
So when you're doing an OLT lien, that is essentially representing that you have a monetary interest in being paid from the division of a property. So if we divide my home and my partner is to receive a certain amount of money, in order to secure his interest in getting that money, you do an OLT lien.
Okay.
That's a very general description, and it's a lot more complicated than that. So I would really prefer that people talk about that within it, like their own attorney.
Okay, that's definitely a you thing. Have you done one before?
Yes, it's often. Yeah.
Common?
In divorces with property, yes. Yeah.
Okay. So let's just use a math example. Let's say your house is assessed at $500,000. You only owe $300,000. You guys agreed upon a 50-50 split. So that means they would take the lien out for his $100,000 and you get to remain in the house. Is that essentially the math on how that would work? Kind
of, yes.
Okay. So then I did a somewhat good job explaining that. And the difference between, and I would love for a loan officer, if one is on the live, to kind of talk about the difference of a OLT lien versus a cash out refinance, because I think the key is how much loan to value there is in the home.
Correct. And that's where that becomes out of my realm. And we do bring in a loan officer, or we bring in a financial advisor, or somebody who can take you to a bank and get your loan approved, because we need to know whether or not that's going to be more beneficial to you to refinance your home at X amount of interest, or if there's some other way that we can pull cash to pay whatever the equity interest that the spouse would have received, to kind of offset that division.
Okay. So I do have a question, kind of going back to what we were discussing on the post-nuptials. Mm-hmm. The assignment of business interest in regards to post-nuptial for business owners and property in a joint trust.
So I don't do trusts. So I would recommend somebody go to a trust attorney.
Okay, so we will save that question.
Yeah.
You need to ask me this question next Thursday, same time. We will have a trust attorney, estate planning attorney next week.
Correct.
Okay.
That's where you go to your trust attorney of how you structure your trust, because then what I'm dealing with is what interest you have in the trust, not the trust itself.
Okay.
So those are two separate things. And then it becomes an issue of whether property is in a trust or whether it's in the community estate.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. I love that. No, we had a great discussion preparing for next week with a trust attorney.
And I would suggest that people go and talk to a trust attorney as well, because that kind of molds a lot of your conversation when you're talking with your divorce attorney. If you are getting divorced and you have a trust or you have a business or an interest in a business and things like that, of how you want to structure that. But I leave that realm to the trust attorneys.
Okay. So let's talk about our unique history since I was your agent and represented you in the purchase of your home. And the deal was particularly complex because the property was in a receivership.
Yeah.
So can you explain what a receivership is?
Yes. So a receiver generally is a neutral third party that obtains the ability to protect, sell, or manage property, a business, or whatever it may be during an account, during a divorce or litigation or whatever it is. Generally, in divorce, we see this more often when we're talking about real estate and we're talking about somebody's homestead or their primary home or other properties that they have. Because what happens is these people get divorced, and usually it's because they don't really like each other anymore.
Right.
And they're ordered to sell a piece of property. Well, in order to sell a piece of property, it's not just done through a court order. You have to go and seek out a real estate agent, list it to be sold, accept an offer, then go sign all of the documents. And sometimes there's people that would be resistant to that, and or people that if they're still in the home, that would be kind of lowering the value of the home by not upkeeping it or just trashing the home. So what you can do in your decree is appoint a receiver, or you can even have a post divorce action to appoint a receiver, and that person would kind of just, it's easiest to think that they come in and step in as the seller. So in our case, we weren't told that there was a receiver, and we did a little research and found out that there was. And so then we had to kind of restructure what we were doing and send it to the receiver for him to sign off on everything, not the listed sellers.
Well, let's talk about that. There was not a truthful seller's disclosure notice. So these things matter because had you really pushed the envelope on that, what could the ramifications have been for a untruthful seller's disclosure notice?
Well, Camille, you tell me. You're the real estate agent. What's the ramifications for it?
I mean, I feel like that's a lawyer question. Why are you putting that on me?
No, that's a real estate question, because what you're going to get into is like, if it were to be something that like could affect the actual property itself, then you're dealing with like a bad contract.
Yeah, breach of contract.
Correct. You're not telling me honestly that there's this pipe that's burst in the ceiling or whatever it may be, and not disclosing that. And then if that comes up to be a problem in the future, like in my case, if it would have been an issue with my title because the wrong person signed it over, ring, ring, hello, let's talk.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So unfortunately, by not doing proper due diligence and having honesty and truth, federal government contracting, they call it Truth in Negotiations Act, TINA. So yes, this is definitely this is where you go to court. So,
well, and we had to go to court in my case.
Yeah,
because we had to get the judge to approve the sale of the home because the owners would not agree.
Yeah. And so there's an added layer that comes into the complexity of this contract now, down to the way you write the contract, down to whose names are in it, down to modifications. So button up, pat myself on the back. I now have experience with that because I actually am serving a lot more couples going through divorce. I'm serving a client right now. We're looking at different properties. And speaking of looking at properties, what's your take on trying to purchase another property before a divorce is finalized?
Know that you're creating community property. If you buy a home while you're married, whether or not you're separated, whether or not you're putting 100% of what you think is your money towards that home, it is still community property as long as it's purchased during the marriage. So I would advise that if you do plan on doing that, you do involve your divorce attorney so they can draft you the correct documentation to make sure that your interests are protected in that home. Because a lot of people will do that. They know they're separating. You know, I've had people sell their home even at the temporary orders phase because they agree to it. And then they both want to go buy a home individually. And it's like, okay, well, that's still going to be community property, and we don't want to divide it again later on. Or let's say somebody gets angry and then says, well, I have a 50% interest in that home, or I have my community interest in that home. And then you're back to square one.
So, what happens if you do kind of hide this purchase that you made before your divorce and it was found after the divorce was finalized?
Then that's what you call undivided property that is still subject to future division.
Oh,
So you're still
so
just kind of adding litigation to your life in the future.
so that spouse has a equity share.
Correct, because it's still community property.
Okay.
So you keep on building your equity, paying all those mortgage
Uh-huh.
payments, and
They can come behind and take their piece of ownership.
they
But
can claim that ownership. Yeah.
would they be protected if you had a postnuptial?
If you had a correct postnuptial and then you did it correctly in the final decree, yes.
Okay.
So you can't just do a postnup and then be like, we're not married anymore. That's not how that works.
Oh.
You still have to get divorced and get a final decree that correctly states all of the things.
Okay. So I feel like this is a I feel question. I feel like Texas makes it a little difficult to divorce. Why is that?
Well, it's a public policy of Texas and a lot of states to promote marriage. We don't. That's why we have a 60-day waiting period from when you file to when you can actually finalize your divorce. We want to promote people staying in a union that they agreed to be in. But then at the same time, you balance the fact that people are autonomous and sometimes don't want to stay together. So the hurdles to get divorced are not, you know,
Easy.
so tenuous that you can't do it. But it is something that's going to make you go, okay, let me think about it. Now, in my personal opinion, I think people that have made the decision to get divorced 9 out of 10 times don't need 60 more days to think about it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So explain that a little bit. The cooling off period being 60 days. What's the psychology behind that?
Oh, I don't know the psychology behind it because I'm not a psychologist, but from what I've seen, the people that come to me when they're ready to file for divorce, they've already done that thinking. They've already done well, maybe I can just put up with this for so much longer and then it doesn't work out. Like they've already been through that mental process of grieving their marriage. So I don't know that they particularly need an additional 60 days to make sure that they're sure.
Okay. So you would say that the people who are very serious about it have already done the grief process. They're checked out.
Yeah.
They're checked out. They're done. Like by the time they're in your chair, there's no like, do you ever get
Most of the time?
Do you ever get the cold feet clients who pay the retainer and then that was me. I'm not gonna. That was me.
I've had clients that I filed their divorce and then non-suited it, filed their divorce and non-suited because they don't know. Like, yes, that happens. And I mean, hey, if your marriage works out, props to you.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's just, hey, that check that I dropped off, where's my money? What happened? What's up with all these billable hours on this retainer?
Because we had to draft your petition and draft a decree that you want to change 18 different times, and then you decided that you still wanted to be with that man. So,
just saying, people do have a change of heart, but it's not cheap. Now, is it?
No.
So, since we're kind of talking about, although you are a family law attorney that handles divorce, do you ever offer counsel on staying married, working it out? What resources do you give somebody who says, I need my retainer back, I'm staying in it?
I typically take the position that somebody who's coming to me for a divorce probably doesn't want my opinion on them staying with their husband or wife or whoever.
Okay.
Um, so if somebody comes to me and says, "Hey, we've decided to work it out," my typical response is, "Hey, great, let's finalize your case with our firm. We'll close you out, and then we'll figure out whatever billing is left and go from there." Because I just don't really think that that's my business if people want to stay married, whether I would personally agree with it or not. Um, but I try to just always let them know, like, if you decide to move forward, like, there's no shame in you coming back to me. Like, we'll
Oh, I
pick
love
back
that.
up. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, some resources, not from attorney.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of really good counselors in the area for marriage counseling. I, try to see if my clients are involved in their faith, and if that is so, like, is there anybody in their church community that they can turn to? Um, I think that there's a lot of good things online that you can just read, and a lot of like,
Any books, maybe?
I don't know that I have a book recommendation off the top of my head, but I would say that there is value in doing the individual work before you
Mm,
try to just go and do couple therapy, or
right.
try to make it be whatever other person's fault. So I
Yeah.
think that the best advice I would say is go actually see a therapist.
Okay. No, I love that. So I did different strategies. I did the individual, I did marriage counseling, marriage retreats,
Mm-hmm.
um, and then post divorce, I did divorce care. That's a good one. It's a little less secular, I would say. So if you're not like religious or whatever, but you may have to go to a church that's where they're held. But I didn't find that one very religious. And something that's a little bit more religious is a discipleship program called Regeneration. And that's like a 12-step program where you kind of get rid of the negativity and help with healing. The grief process is, they say, 18 to 24 months, where you deal with shock, denial, all the way down to like anger, finally to acceptance. But
And so many people don't realize, like, I think earlier I said that the grieving of their marriage has already been done. I don't think people realize that you can actually, like, grieve this thing, this idea of our commitment towards each other.
yeah, so I guess for me was the future I thought I would have.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to like break up with this idea. And so my parents have been married like 47 years. And a lot of people in my family was like, divorce is not an option. So I immediately felt like either failure, shame, embarrassment, all these things. Didn't even tell my family about it whenever I was going through it, because I'm like, oh, great, I'm going to bring shame on my family.
Mm-hmm.
I thought about Mulan, shame on my family. I was like, oh, can't tell him. Can you believe that I like did not even tell my best friend's sister for an entire
No,
year?
and knowing your sister and you and your sister, that is shock. Like,
It
shocking.
doesn't even make sense. Like,
Yeah.
and I sometimes I can't live my life in regret, but I wish that I would have just got the healing instead of the masking and the pretending that nothing's wrong, and just started the healing earlier. Because the thing is, you carry that into the new.
Correct.
So,
And if you have kids, it reflects onto your kids too.
yeah, and so that was like my mindset shift was, I have to be the best version of myself. And now that he's a little bit more aware, he's very big on those emotional cues of like, Mom, what's wrong? Like, if I'm flustered, if these people are out here acting up and it's just on my face, and he's like, Mom, what's wrong? Do you need something?
Yeah.
How can I help? How do I fix this? So I couldn't imagine still being in the like depressed state of in the resentment. So I did the healing.
And the people that are still, a lot of the people that are still in the resentment are the ones that are coming to do modifications and are in litigation nonstop.
So let's talk about the modifications.
Sorry.
No, you're good. So we talked a lot about divorce, but being that you're a family law attorney, you handle other scopes of family law. Modifications. What does that look like? What does that mean?
So that means that there's been a material substantial change in the circumstances of the children or the parties, in that the current order needs to change. Whether it be there's, one of the kids is having an issue with school, or, medication issue, or whatever it may be, whether, a parent has become ill or they've developed some sort of substance abuse issue. And it doesn't have to be that serious, but those are kind of the situations that we'll see when a court order needs to modify. Or, like, let's say a happier situation would be you find out that your kid is actually, the next up and coming Disney star, and they need to be traveling back and forth between LA and Florida and New York, and they need to have an agent and the whole nine. A standard possession schedule, or even really any possession schedule, probably isn't going to work with that. And so we need to change what the current order provides.
Okay. And what about more income, less income? Is that
That can be a ground to change things, yes.
okay?
Yeah.
And is it automatic, like every 3 years, 2 years?
No, it's a different situation for people that like go through the OAG.
Yeah.
They will automatically send out kind of renewals. Let's look at this order again, or they have the information available to them to see if this person is making more money and child support amounts need to change. And so they can send that letter out, but it is not an automatic legal proceeding.
Okay.
Like, somebody has to file, whether it's the parents or the attorney general.
Okay. Okay. And let's talk about adoptions. Last thing is, you said that you do modifications, divorce, and adoptions.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, is that foster care into?
It can be foster care to adoption. It can be, CPS got involved and parents were terminated. It could be, unfortunately, a parent has died, and so like a step parent or whoever is adopting, or just a step parent adoption because the other parent is absent. There's a lot of different types of adoption. You can do adult adoption. So adoptions range, but I would say like adoptions are like the happy days in court.
Yeah. Okay. So I like to conclude my segments with, pouring into the youth, and we've covered from the courtroom to the closing table and everything in between. But what piece of advice do you have for an upcoming rising attorney in Tarrant County?
I would say that Tarrant County is very unique. I think most attorneys in the area want to work together cordially. They want to build up the next generation. But the best way that you can kind of get that knowledge and build yourself is just by being yourself. I think very early on in my practice, I would see various different attorneys and I would try to emulate what they were doing, but it was very disingenuous and just didn't come across well. But when I kind of just said, you know what, imposter syndrome is real, but the best thing I can do is just be myself, I really saw kind of a turn in my career. So I would just really advise anybody in the legal profession to just be yourself.
Okay. Okay. And burning question is, straight out of law school, am I going to start making $250,000 or what?
Nah.
Levels of expectation. What's the average salary for a recent graduate?
When I got out of law school, I was making, I think, like $55,000.
Okay.
But I will say this: is it possible for you to get out of law school and go make $250,000? Sure, but you're going to be giving up so much time. You're going to be working nonstop, and it's going to take away from all other aspects of your life. So if it's important to you, and there's no shame in it, if it's important to you to make a lot of money right away, then go do that. But just level your expectation that if you're going to do that, then you're also not going to have a home life, building a family, going to travel. Those things are going to be pretty rare to kind of cross over.
Okay.
How will you get there and making money for sure? But
So, if someone's goal is to make a lot of money with a law degree, what practice of law would you say is a high paying sector?
I mean, I think it depends on whether or not you're good at your job.
Oh,
Because I know a lot of, I mean, I think people would jump to like corporate or in house or things like that. But if you're not really good at that, then that's not going
yeah.
to bode well for you. But I also think that if you're doing family law and you're good at your job, I know a lot of very wealthy family law attorneys. So,
Yeah.
it just ranges on whatever it is that you're doing and how much work you put into it.
Okay. Okay. Love that. Well, hey, thank you so much for pouring into us today. How can people find you to book a consultation and, start services?
Yeah, if you are interested in hiring me, you can call our office. I work at Dalian Web Family Law. We're located off of Hewlin.
Okay.
Our phone number is 817-409-1136. So give us a call. We'll see if we can get you set up and then we'll go from there.
Okay, everyone, thank you so much. This is attorney Sara Vargas with Family Law. Thank you for joining us tonight. Do we have any questions before I end? Anybody have any burning questions? I'll give you one complimentary, as long as it's reasonable. But if it depends, then you need to call. We got some feedback from Dunn Anderson. Outstanding interview.
Thanks, Dunn.
Okay, anybody on Instagram? All right. Well, that's it. That's all I got. See y'all next week. Okay. And